In terms of solutions to the bigger problem, which is, of course, this recovery that sort of isn't, right, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's coming back in a little bit for those, certainly those of us who were lucky enough to keep our jobs. Although we maybe pulled back our spending, we're kind of getting back a little bit, but there's so many of those people many people are still out of work, Rodney. So in terms of solutions, I got three things here that caught my eye. One of them was written by you, an informed American. To grow the world economy, IMF says just borrow and spend a bunch of cash. This is the plan for the G20 nations to boost their spending, which they believe could help spur economic growth. Now, that's definitely on the table. I saw another thing here on zerohedge.com this morning. Former Goldman Sachs CFO Marty Chavez, it comes out in favor of universal basic income. Why, Rodney? To quote, stave off revolution. And finally, not a solution per se, but an ongoing policy, which is the Fed commits to keep buying bonds until the economy goes back to full employment. Well, that's going to be a long time, Rodney. So we are certainly in this for the long haul, and what that might mean over the long haul could be massive government spending to help dig us out of this hole. How do you see this?
I think it's coming, right? It's the one thing that the two political parties can agree on is spending our money. And so I think we're going to see a huge infrastructure bill come through next year in the name of restarting the economy and doing something good for the economy. I think it's going to be a couple of $1 trillion, and it's going to be on top of the stimulus that's working its way right through right now. And pretend I didn't say that so you don't cover your ears.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. But so I think you're going to see a lot of money spending. Universal basic income is a great idea if you pair it with the notion of getting rid of everything else. Don't do temporary assistance for needy families. Don't do WIC. Don't do SNAP. Don't do all the other social programs. Just do UBI and then tax it away as people make more money. And you can't do it at thresholds, right? It has to be a percentage that moves up so that you're not encouraging anybody not to make money. And so I have no problem with it, but we never seem to get to that part. It's always just give away more cash. But back to the G20 and then the Fed, because governments aren't being punished with paying higher interest, they have no reason to be judicious with cash. And so if you could take a loan at 1% interest for $1 million, and pay $10,000, would you do it? I mean, I don't know. A lot of people would. And if you could take a loan for $1 million at 0.1% interest, think about that, $1,000. That's where our federal government is. That's where most governments are. And by the way, in Europe, they're negative. Governments can borrow millions and billions of dollars, and they have to pay back less than the loan. It matures. So what motivation do they have to be judicious with the cash? And so this is where we are. And the Federal Reserve and other central banks are enabling this because they are buying so many bonds. The Federal Reserve, and I won't bore you with all the numbers, but just know that they're buying roughly $120 billion worth of bonds every month to keep interest rates ridiculously low. And this is about 50% more than they were buying when they were doing QE back after the great financial crisis, right? At the point where they called it Q infinity, where they were just going to buy until things got better. They were buying 75 billion a month. And here they are at 140. And so I'm sorry, not 50% more. We're closer to 100% more, aren't we? So anyway, the point is we're buying so many more bonds, and it's keeping interest rates ridiculously low. And it's killing savers. This is something everybody can see. Go look at your savings account, see where you used to earn a couple of percent on your checking account or in your, whatever. It is literally 0.1. And so it forces people into risky assets. This is what it does. You want to know why Wall Street's flying? It's because interest rates are close to zero. And if you want to make a return, you have to go into stocks, and it pushes everybody further out on the risk curve.
It's funny because, I have, of course, a checking account and then a separate, what used to be a, quote, high yield online savings account. And at this point, I only put the money in there just so it's out of my sight. It serves no other purpose. It doesn't earn any money.
I have a money market account tied to my other accounts, and I used to use it for different things years ago. And in 2008 or 9, I can't remember, I just stopped using it. And it's got $700 in it. It had $700 when I stopped using it. I think it has $714 in it. This is after more than a decade. And that just kind of tells you where we've been.
Great stuff.
And I leave it just because it annoys me. I look at it once in a while and go, yes, this is how we're killing savers in the United States of America.
Yeah, as a constant reminder. I'd like to go back just a second to UBI, Universal Basic Income. Could it potentially? Now, I agree with your point, which is essentially you remove welfare programs and you make it. It certainly would streamline things. Could it potentially, if you wanted to sell this, could you sell this as being revenue neutral, or is that just a complete pipe dream?
That's a pipe dream, because it wouldn't be revenue neutral, but from the standpoint of the spending and expenses. However, you could sell it as close to revenue neutral because you pull out all of the bureaucracy involved right now. Yeah. Just imagine what we go through to verify things for TANF and for all the other things that we have, the unemployment benefits, all that stuff. And you could just get rid of it. I mean, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And so, if you're unemployed, I don't care. You're still getting your UBI, but your tax rate is now zero. Well, it's not zero because you actually pay taxes on unemployment benefits, but you get my point. Yeah. And so you can do this very elegantly and you could get rid of all of the bureaucracy, but cities and states and the federal government aren't interested in getting rid of bureaucracy. That's a job killer.
That's a good point. Although if they lose a job, they'll have universal basic income.
There you go. Right.
Do you have a number in mind? The one I've heard about is around 30,000, something like that. And some certainly have it higher and lower, but that's the one roughly about where I come across. Do you have
I'm more in the 16 to 18 range.
Okay. So. You penny pincher. I say just hit the gas, and actually, this will be an ongoing conversation, and I think we're gonna have this one a little bit more certainly as we see what the next Congress will do, what they might pass in terms of stimulus. Well, I think can we say we're not going to see one in this Congress, or are you still hopeful by the end of the year?
Stimulus, yeah, we're going to have it. We're going to have it by Christmas Day.
Okay. Well, that's
and
good.
So, but in terms of UBI, you're going to hear about it because Andrew Yang is running for mayor of New York.
So. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so that would be a continuing conversation, and I do want to in future shows, Rodney, really talk about maybe we get into modern monetary theory or something. Some of these ideas where they assume you could just spend into oblivion with no consequences. So, and I know that might rub certainly many of our viewers the wrong way. So, I would like to maybe poke them a little bit.